Here we are today. I'm Tyler Jurgen, Senior Technical Product Marketing Manager here at Veeam. I'm here to talk to you about, our presentation here on simple, secure, and fast, introducing the Veeam Software Appliance. Along with me, I've got the famous Matt Crape. Matt, why don't you introduce yourself?
Thanks for that illustrious intro there, Tyler. As Tyler mentioned, we're both Senior Technical Product Marketing Managers here at Veeam. We're both very passionate about the Veeam data platform, and we're excited to talk about the Veeam Software Appliance. If you're not familiar with Veeam Software Appliance, you're in for a lot of learning for the next little bit here. And even if you are familiar with it, the brand new offering, we're probably going to show you some tips and tricks, some things that maybe you didn't necessarily know already. So Tyler, you ready to get this thing started?
Let's do it, Matt. Let's do it. So I think here we got, what are some common customer challenges we see out in the wild on a regular basis? You got your setup and configuration challenges, your security, and your overhead. And really, what does that mean? When you're talking about setup and configuration, I was, working as a service provider for many, many years, and you see so many different kinds of setup and configurations out there in the wild. There's every different kind of customer, every different kind of environment, and everybody likes to set things up a little different. And you also get those security and those overhead challenges. Matt, I know you love to talk about those. Why don't you give us an overview?
Oh, absolutely. So anyone who works in any size of environment knows that deploying new solutions, whether they're hardware appliances, software-based, anything, there's a lot of challenges that go into that. You mentioned security. Do you have a security team that you need to work with? Do you have to start thinking about things like, how do I make sure this solution is actually secure after it's been deployed? Is there a checklist I need to go through? Are there certain requirements that you have to adhere to? For example, maybe if you're in the financial industry, you have specific requirements where you have to harden things according towards DISA STIG. So there's all sorts of challenges when it comes to not just getting the process, the hardware, the software, whatever it is out there and deployed. There's the aspect of, how do I make sure I'm securing it, that I'm not leaving my data open, that I'm not leaving the system open to attackers. And when you take these and put them together, it also leads to a lot of overhead. So you're spending time performing these tasks. Maybe you're not a DISA STIG expert and you mess something up and the security team has come back, performed their audit, realize that you forgot to do something, go back to the drawing board again. Maybe there's even just overhead with deploying something and misconfiguring the deployment and you have to start from scratch. At the end of the day, time is money. Everyone's being asked to do more with less these days, and every penny counts. So overhead isn't always just about necessarily how much does something cost, but the time that it takes to perform a task, as well as the opportunity lost, right? What else could you be doing with that time? If you're spending all this time hardening an appliance, well, then you're not doing something else. So Tyler, I mentioned an appliance. Let's talk about what is a software appliance.
Absolutely, Matt. I like that you brought up the overhead there because it really does. Do you want to spend your weekend reading through DISA STIG guidelines? Maybe you find that fun. I know you probably find that fun, Matt, but there's other things I think you can be doing with your time. So when we're talking about what a software appliance is, you get all these different kinds of software appliances on the market. I know a lot of people are probably familiar with, the different firewalls that come as a software appliance. You got your vCenters that come as a software appliance. There's a whole pile of different examples. I'm sure there's a few there that I'm forgetting. But really, it comes down to something that is purpose-built. It's specifically designed to do one task and one task really well, rather than a mishmash of different things. I know back in the day as an IT person, you'd have, I'm going to deploy one server, I'm going to deploy 15 different roles on it. And that gets to be complex and difficult to try to secure and make sure you have something that is efficient, where a software appliance really shortcuts the time it takes to getting you that purpose-built system. And I know we're talking about getting something ready for deployment. Matt, I know I missed a few examples of software appliances and getting stuff ready. What do you like about a software appliance in general?
What I enjoy about software appliances, There's a couple of things here. So one, it gives you a lot more flexibility. In a lot of cases, you can deploy it as an OVA if you're running VMware. You can maybe deploy it to a cloud solution. At the same time, you can often deploy to hardware of your choice. So you may not necessarily be locked into a specific vendor, a specific ecosystem, but rather it lets you leverage whether it's your vendor of preference when it comes to hardware, or maybe it's even a matter of hardware that you already have. So you're not going out there buying new servers, especially if you're in a test mode, right? When it comes to software appliances, it dramatically reduces the amount of time it takes to get things up and running. No longer do you actually have to deploy the underlying operating system, perform all that patching, perform the hardening, then install the software, configure the software, then harden that software, then actually set it up and use it. No, one of the biggest benefits of the software appliance is being able to take that, roll it out efficiently, quickly, and in a repeatable manner. So being able to do this at scale, if that is something that you require. Tyler, you mentioned that you have a little bit of an MSP background. I'm sure that you would see tremendous value in being able to take something like this and create a repeatable process.
Absolutely, Matt. And that's the one thing I'm super excited about with the Veeam Software Appliance itself, is being able to take it and repeatedly deploy it on different customer environments wherever they are, whether you want to go with a software appliance approach, whether you want to take that software appliance and deploy it on some physical hardware and ship that physical hardware out. What you ultimately get is something that you can consistently trust to be the same every time. So you're not worried about, does this, did I set this setting right somewhere? Did I configure it with the appropriate sizing and configuration? You're not stressing over those. You're getting something that is set up and configured right away to be pre-built and pre-hardened right out of the bat, right? And then you get that security, that trust with that zero trust access, that automated patching, no Linux expertise. And what do we mean by that when we say that? So that automated patching, I like that with our appliance because we take that patching headache away from you. You set the settings that you want to be rolling out the patching when you want it, wherever you want it, on the frequency you want. And it will keep your environment up to date. And not just on the Veeam software appliance, but on the proxies and the Veeam hardened repository when you deploy those with our Veeam infrastructure appliances as well. So you get that across the board patching and configuration to make sure that not only are you secure from day one when you deploy it, but you keep being secure in the future, because we all know software comes out, there's new patches, there's new fixes all the time. Do you want to be sitting there spending your time going, hey, how can I roll this out? You got the Veeam software appliance that just manages that for you. Matt, do you have any thoughts on this as well?
Yeah, so to me, this really opens the door to where and how this can be deployed. All of a sudden, you're able to get data protection closer to the data. So say you have an organization that you're working with and they have lots of branch offices or smaller remote offices. Being able to deploy a software appliance, whether it's a matter of installing it on a small form factor PC and shipping it out there, or if they've got a host that's running some sort of virtualization platform, such as VMware or Hyper-V, being able to actually just deploy the software appliance to that and get up and running in minutes without the need of adding all those extra steps. It really, really does open the door for a lot more opportunity. And at the end of the day, really helps ensure that your data stays safe and resilient. So we've been talking a lot, about what is the Veeam software appliance. Tyler, why don't you sum it up for us before we jump into a demo here?
Absolutely, I appreciate that. So really, it comes down to being able to have more streamlined deployments, being able to decrease the amount of time you're spending on getting these deployments out the door. You get that protection that you trust, that compliance angle that is so important these days. And it gives you more time to focus on what is important to you. Focus on your strategy. Free the IT teams from routine upkeep and tasks that you have. Because Matt, I don't miss the days of staying up at 3 a.m. to go through my patch cycle for every different environment I had to do. I wish this was out 30 years ago so I could just sit there and patch at whim, right?
Absolutely. Anyone who manages infrastructure knows that patching isn't fun, especially in a distributed environment, somewhere where you have all these different components. So being able to bring in that centralized patching to give you this one interface to actually manage all those components, it's a huge game changer. But there's also that built-in protection. We've talked about security a few times, and part of the reason for that is because it is so needed and so required these days. Nobody's data is safe, full stop. Doesn't matter if you're the smallest of small or the largest of large, attackers are going after your data. So making sure that your data stays safe and that the platform that you're trusting, the Veeam data platform, remains in an optimal, safe condition, that's really your best bet. And we put the easy button on this. And I mentioned earlier, opportunity cost, right? By taking away all the time that you would normally spend rolling this out, hardening it, testing it, all that sort of stuff, you can now take that time and actually start working on projects, to help your organization move forward. So Tyler, we've been talking a lot, at Veeam, we always love doing demos, right? Showing you the proof points. So why don't we hop into the lab and start us off, show us what the brand new interface looks like here.
Absolutely. And what I want to show here is that you can get to this interface through any web browser because we now have that new web-based UI. And that doesn't remove the thick client at all, but it gives you an option now for your teams to be able to do some tasks with the web-based UI. And I want to really show here a quick button where we now have that SAML SSO integration. So I can go here, I don't have to remember my username and password, I don't have to dig up my password manager anymore to get in. And just click the sign in with SSO. Because this is cached, it didn't pop up that MFA prompt that I would get. But normally, if I haven't logged into this environment, now I'll get an MFA prompt as well. So you can have it tied in with your SAML SSO provider and have that handle your MFA for you, which is a fantastic feature. I love being able to streamline and centralize that because now, if you're setting up an MFA provider independently on your different apps everywhere, that's a lot of different MFA codes to remember, to have to track, to, just maintain after the fact. So I like to be able to just streamline that there.
Absolutely. I am all for standardizing on things. And if I could standardize, like you said, your identity management platform, as well as all the conditional access policies that go along with that, and tie that into my data resilience strategy, that's huge, right? One less new tool to learn. Going back the whole streamlined talking track, there's a lot of benefit there. Now, before we go any further, I'm actually going to pull out a couple of live questions that we're getting from the audience. We'll see if we can stay on top of these because we've been receiving so many questions about the Veeam Software Appliance. So first off, probably one of the most popular questions is there a migration path to the Windows version? So quick note on that. Currently today, the Veeam Software Appliance is what we call in early release. It's fully supported, but Veeam Software Appliance runs Veeam Backup and Replication, which is part of the Veeam Data Platform. The next version of Veeam Data Platform is coming out later this year, and there's going to be migration tools that will be available as part of that. If you're interested today, we've actually got a publicly facing sign-up sheet that you could go to. I already dropped that into chat by answering one of the questions, but you could sign up to be notified when we have a tool available, and support will work with you proactively to get you transitioned over. Now, the second question I want to handle here before I pitch it back to you, Tyler, comes around features and compatibility. So the question basically boils down to, I see a couple of them coming in here. What capabilities from a VBR perspective does the Veeam Software Appliance have?
Well, you got all the features and capabilities that you know and love with the Veeam data platform. So when you're talking about the thick client here, it's going to look very similar. I'll pop over to here right away. And it really gives you that, sign in with SSO again. It gives you all the same features that you know and love. So you can see everything, you can do everything. There's really nothing that you're going to be missing out if you move to the Veeam Software Appliance today. The web client, however, that is going to be an iterative improvement. We've got a lot of the main things that you're going to be able to do with the web client here. So you've got your Hyper-V, you've got your VMware backups, you got your repositories, so you can do, object storage, you can do Vault, you can do your Veeam hardened repository. You can manage your proxies, see all your proxies. So you got a lot of that management capabilities here. Some of the extra stuff you may have to jump into that thick client itself to do. So if you're going here and you want to set up, some RBAC rules, we got that new enhanced RBAC that is coming with V13 here, and you can see that here in our roles and features here. So that kind of stuff you're going to want to dive into the thick client to configure. But, you've got all the features either way, however you want to slice and dice it.
So we are getting a ton of questions coming in here, which is fantastic. Keep them coming, folks. I can tell you right now, we're not going to be able to get to them all just based on the volume, but we'll go back and forth through questions as we go along. Now, Tyler.
I did want to jump in. Sorry, Matt, because I saw a question just come in. Can the appliance double as a hardened repository? Absolutely. So the appliance comes with a repository on its own, just like every Veeam installation, but that default repository is immutable right off the bat. So it's great to see, great to have, and you don't have to worry about that protection anymore. Like, you have that immutable repository.
Now, to get into the nitty gritty a little bit, what Tyler said is right, but this doesn't displace the Veeam hardened repository. So the built-in repository will offer you that immutability right after the install, but we still have the Veeam hardened repository that fully integrates with this. So it's important to understand the difference between the two. But yes, once again, going back to the whole remote office, branch office, if you really want to ship this out and not spin up anything else, you could leverage that built-in repository for immutability.
Absolutely, Matt. There's a ton of questions coming in. It's fantastic to see. Why don't I show a little bit of what we can do here? So right away when you're logging into that web UI, and I want to show the web UI because that's something that is new and exciting. You can see the overview page. This I love because now if you're looking at it going, hey, what kind of products, what does my resilience status look like? You can see, hey, I've got some failed jobs here. What's going on? I can dig in a little closer, find out why they're failed, find some details on, hey, are they succeeding? Are they failing? Did a retry work on it that maybe the initial try didn't? You can go into the jobs. You can set up a few jobs here. You can configure your jobs. You can see the schedule. And when you create a new job, it's really that same kind of look and feel that you're used to. Like, you're not having to relearn everything right off the bat. Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, so I was going to say, while you're talking about jobs, one of the things that's critical for every backup job is being able to send to the repository. Now, you already touched on this briefly, Tyler, but I want to call out because we had another question about, does the appliance integrate with Veeam Vault? So, Tyler, if I trouble you, actually go to the repositories tab. Short answer is yes, it integrates with Veeam Vault. You'll see we've actually got the option right across the top there, right next to scale out repositories. The integration is super straightforward. It really pulls it in. And once again, you'll still see the same integration that you have today in the thick client if you opt to use that. So hopefully that answers the question out there from whoever had that. Sorry, the list is just growing by the moment here. This is fantastic, though.
Yeah, and continue, Matt. You're on a roll. I like it.
Yeah. So we've been talking about repositories now and the web UI. But one thing we haven't really talked about a whole heck of a lot yet is how do you manage this, right? So we're talking about how it's a virtual appliance and all the benefits of an appliance. But all I'm saying here is stuff related to actual backup and replication, jobs, and so forth. Tyler, if I want to go in there and say, start looking at configuration files, services, setting network address stuff, what does that actually look like?
Oh, that's a great question here. Why don't we jump over to the Veeam host management interface here? Unfortunately, I've timed out. That's one of the great security features we have. So while I log in, I won't be able to talk and type. Why don't you explain a little bit to people on what we can expect to see once we get logged in here?
Absolutely. So you'll see what Tyler's doing right now. It's protected by MFA. Keep in mind, we've got this web interface, and it's kind of open to whatever your internal network allows you to have it open to. But this host management console, it's separate from the Veeam backup replication interface. Why does that matter? Well, it actually allows you to define different users who can access it and perform different tasks. So where this gets interesting is a real separation of duties. Say, for example, you've got your backup admins. Well, they probably shouldn't be touching the network settings, for example. That should be restricted to your security team, your operations team, whomever, a separate team. So with a separate interface, we're able to lock things down a little bit more. But through the power of the web UI, we can also open up access to those folks who may not traditionally have had access but required access. So that's a long-winded way to say, if you've got a web browser and you've got a networking team who knows how to route traffic properly, you can really provide a secure experience for all the teams involved.
Absolutely, Matt. And I love that we throw it on a different port here. So you can block that port for different people, for different networks, while still allowing access to the Veeam backup or replication web interface. And you don't have to have, different rule, or you don't have to have the same rule governing everything. It's purpose-built. You can do whatever you need with it. And we've got a remote access here. You can lock it down. So if you don't want people to be able to access this host management web UI, you can turn it off. But Matt, if we turn it off, you got to have a way to turn it back on. How would we do that with the Veeam Software Appliance?
Well, so we've got a couple of options here, right? So if this is truly, if it's running as, let's say, a virtual machine, we still offer a console access, a text-based UI. So in theory, you could pull up, let's say, the vCenter console. But for situations where it's installed on a physical machine, you can actually still go there and log in through the text-based UI. Now, I see that you've got the SSH server turned on or setting pulled up here. So why don't you walk us through what you're going to think about there?
Well, what I wanted to show here as well is not only do we have that administrator account, so you can log in and administrate it, but we also have that security officer role as well. So you have here, you have the request submitted to security officer. So when I enable the SSH server, I can't just jump in and enable it. I have to have that second authorization to jump in when you have that security officer role enabled. You have to have that security officer log in and then approve that interaction. So you really do gain that extra level of security, that extra checks and balances that are so important when you're managing your servers here. And then we get your users and roles. And these roles are going to be managed here, and these roles don't necessarily give you full permissions into your backup or replication UI either. So you can create a role here just for your administrator that needs to manage your network settings like I jumped through, or the time servers, without giving them the keys to the kingdom to manage the backup jobs itself. And then you got that integration with that backup infrastructure. So I saw one of the jobs or one of the questions jump across chat where people ask, does this integrate with Veeam One? Absolutely. You can set that data collection there where you enable it, you integrate with your Veeam One, and then your Veeam backup replication interface, you now got your dashboards, you got your reports, everything like that integrated directly in to that web UI in your Veeam software appliance. Just a fantastic.
You can't just pull this up. This is too much of a tease. Why don't you show us how the search engine works now with the reports? Now that we have this tight integration, let's go blow your socks off here.
Oh, absolutely. So why don't we look at something like Mutable? I've got some immutable workloads. I can pull this up, I can preview them, and now we can pull up a report right from in the Veeam Software Appliance web UI to see what workloads I have that are immutable, because that's so important these days. You can still integrate with non-immutable repositories, but as I know, many people are migrating more to that immutable repository. You can use that default built-in one. You can use that Veeam hardened repository, and then you can use Veeam Vault for that offsite to keep you immutable from start to finish on your backup jobs. So that's great here. Was there something else you wanted me to show?
Yeah, so getting a couple of questions in here related to this integration. Seeing same question a few times here, and it comes down to, is this going to be a replacement for Veeam One? No, Veeam One is still its own engine that's running in the background. This is a matter of bringing together that tighter integration. You might find yourself needing to go to the Veeam One interfaces less frequently, but it's truly about trying to bring all of your data to a single pane of glass. Now, keep in mind, Veeam One consists of a couple of different components, namely the reporting side, but we've also got the monitoring side, the side that goes out there, monitors your Hyper-V and vSphere infrastructure. So there's still that component. You might need to use the business view to go in there and check out those things, but a lot of the reporting and analytics, we're streamlining right into the web UI here. So you still need to have a Veeam Data Platform Advanced license in order to leverage all those capabilities. But to make the short answer long, at the end of the day, Veeam One is still a separate component. We just got that tight integration with the new web UI.
Absolutely, and I love that. I'm just looking through the reports going, hey, how can I improve my lab here? But you can see, like, somebody had asked, hey, can this show on different repositories? And really, if your repository is immutable, your jobs will be immutable. So you can see here, we got some repositories that are not immutable. And we do that on purpose so we can show the different ways of handling this stuff. But you can see that we got that object storage here that is just a standard mutable object storage. So you can blast this out and go, hey, what are my jobs that are on that mutable storage? And how can I move them to something better? And one thing I don't think we did show here, what about the Veeam Updater, Matt? Do we have anything cool with that?
Oh, we've got lots of cool things. So one of the questions, once again, that's in here a lot is, well, let's step back a moment. Questions around proxies and the Veeam hardened repository. How do I go about deploying that these days? So if you're familiar with the Veeam Software Appliance, if you go to the webpage today, you'll see that you can download this, and it runs on something called Just Enough OS. And what that is it's designed to basically have the minimal components required in order to actually get this up and running. The idea is with a smaller footprint, there's less of an attack surface, and we can also deliver that pre-hardened experience that we've talked about a few times. There's a separate infrastructure ISO available that will let you do things like deploy the Veeam hardened repository, as well as things like the proxy workers. So these will be like the Linux-based proxies. They're all delivered with the Just Enough OS delivery system, and they're installed to basically be ready to go. Now, going back to the question of, well, how do I manage all these things? That's kind of where the Veeam Updater comes into play. So, Tyler, I don't know if we've got the Veeam Updater ready to show here.
Yeah, we've got it here. So you can see right from a glance, I've got a proxy deployed with that Veeam infrastructure appliance that Matt had just mentioned. I've got a Veeam hardened repository, again, deployed with that software Veeam infrastructure appliance that Matt had also mentioned. So we've got all of them here. You can see we've got our server, we've got our proxy, and we can see that we have some updates here that we should check for. Let's see what's going to happen. But ideally what's going to happen here is we'll check for the updates, and it's going to push the updates automatically to every component. So this is how you really just go in and manage your entire infrastructure at a glance, couple clicks. Couldn't be easier. Like I said, this is a feature that I love the most. And you can see the ones that have the update status available and the ones that don't. And again, this is a lab, so it's a lab environment. There might be a few, things that just aren't quite working right because, let's face it, we like to play too. So we probably broke something along the way, and the updates just aren't checking. But normally you wouldn't have that problem.
Yeah, we like to break things because it gives us an excuse to go talk to our friends in PM and R&D. But one of the neat things about the Veeam updater, Tyler, security, top of mind for everyone. What do we do in cases of a dark site? Are we able to still offer some sort of protection there?
Absolutely, Matt. There's a couple ways to do it. So with the updates, you can upload a hotfix directly. So if you have a hotfix to do that. But the more common way to do it with a dark site is you set up a mirror repository. It's like you would with any other Linux distribution. Set the mirror repository, you mirror to our official repository that we host. So you're getting the updates only from a trusted source from us. You mirror that down into your dark site so that mirror repository will have to have internet access. And then you can connect your Veeam Software Appliance, your proxies, to that and get all the updates you need right off the bat. And I know they're constantly improving on different ways to make this even easier for everybody out there. So I want to show a bit of the update settings here while we're talking about that updater. I mentioned you can tune these. Oh, toggle it on, toggle it off. You can set your maintenance windows to weekly. You can configure what day. You can configure the compliance deadline. So you got a lot of flexibility here to be able to tune that update to how you want it to be done.
Yeah, and that actually ties into a great question that just came in around hypervisor support. So the question specifically is around, will Appliance support HPE's new hypervisor? So the short answer is yes, not today though. Why is that? Because that's not supported in Veeam Backup and Replication today. Keep in mind, Veeam Software Appliance is just a deployment method for Veeam Backup and Replication. Now, the good news is when that support does get added to Veeam Backup and Replication, you'll be able to pull down the update using Veeam Updater here and actually apply it fairly seamlessly to your install. So you don't need to go to the web page, download an ISO file or an executable and perform the traditional upgrade. Rather, if you actually set your windows in the background, that is your change windows, you could basically have this apply automatically for you, and you'll wake up the next morning and look at that, you'll have brand new functionality in there.
Absolutely, absolutely. So one other thing I wanted to show here, because we were here quick, is you can create a new role here just specifically to manage that RBAC, that enhanced RBAC here. So there's a couple questions I saw jump through chat. Unfortunately, I don't think we'll be able to cover every one of them. We'd be here for the next 6 hours. I'd love to be, but I don't think we have that kind of time. But there's a couple questions. Does this integrate with Veeam Enterprise Manager? Absolutely, that's still a thing. You can still integrate the software appliance with that. And in fact, the Veeam Enterprise Manager comes as a software appliance as well. So you can deploy that as software appliance on however you want to deploy that as well. And then the RBAC permissions, I don't think we have the time to jump too detailed in it, but you can set the permissions based off what you want to do. Do you want to manage workloads specifically? Do you want to manage the entire inventory? It's really a great way to slice and dice up your permission system. You can see we have some here, and you just edit and away you go.
So a real neat use case for these would be, once again, all of a sudden, let's say you want to open this up to, I don't know, a product owner within your organization. You can actually go out there now and create specific RBAC policies that will allow them to perform backups on, say, production workloads, but only recover them to, say, a test environment. Or maybe they can only write those to specific repositories. Or maybe they can only restore back to specific hosts. So you're able to get really, really granular in what you could do. At the end of the day, a lot of this is basically based off of, the source or the target. And I mean that in the sense of it could be the source repository, it could be the source hypervisor, be the source of wherever the data is coming from and the target being the same. You could say they can only access backups from these repositories and only restore them to these hosts. So you can actually go tremendously in depth with this. It really opens the door for a lot of new capabilities, and putting the efficiencies hat back on. This lets backup admins actually offload some of the tasks that would otherwise be tedious. If you happen to be working in an organization that has, let's say, tier 1 help desk, you're able to create roles that help put some guardrails around what they can or can't do. Maybe they're allowed to access production backups, but once again, only be able to restore them to a secondary environment. So you're able to get extremely granular in what you can do with this. Now, Tyler, we've been talking a lot about all these new capabilities and whatnot. One thing I do want to make sure that we touch on, though, at least briefly, is what sort of malware detection do we have built into Veeam Software Appliance? This isn't necessarily new for V13, but maybe not everyone's actually aware of what Veeam Backup Replication can do when it comes to detecting malware.
Absolutely, absolutely. So we got that malware detection engine here, and luckily we're not seeing anything getting flagged on our current backups. I don't have too much to show you, but I can show you some of the settings here with the malware detection. So if you have some noisy environments, we got that encryption detection. That'll really detect if you got a lot more encrypted blocks coming through. And I'll just pause right here, let you guys ingest this. I'm really sorry if we haven't got a chance to answer all your questions. Both Matt and I were trying to show you guys stuff as we go. So if we haven't been able to answer your questions, that's just the nature of I can't talk and type at the same time. But here, let's get back to the malware detection. I know Matt's probably frantically answering questions as I go through here. You can see we got some file system activity analysis. We got some indicators of compromise. So some of this stuff is great for if you're looking at your environment and all of a sudden you get an alert for something as innocuous as like TeamViewer. Maybe TeamViewer showed up on one of your servers, and if you're not using TeamViewer, that's a concern. But TeamViewer itself is a great program to use. So these kind of things will show up in your backup data so that you can flag them and go, why is TeamViewer all of a sudden on the system that it shouldn't be on? And you can start digging and find more information there. We've got that incident API, which I like. So if you've integrated with your different CM and source solutions, and you need to, some incident has happened, it can kick off backup jobs automatically for you. So you have that close to real-time backup of your environment for either investigative purposes or just a quick area to recover from. So we got a ton of different options here within our malware detection that gives you that peace of mind and gives you that extra set of eyes, that security depth, defense in depth to help you out. So Matt, was there any other questions that we had that were, pressing? Anything we want to answer live here?
Lots and lots of interest around the management of basically things like proxies. I know we touched on that briefly. Tyler, I don't know if we still have that window up. I think a lot of folks could use a second look at that to actually see. You could go in there and manage the lifecycle of the proxy. So this, going back to your former life as an MSP, I don't know if you have any 2 cents to add to what this tool really allows you to do.
Well, what I like with this is, like, I saw one of the questions is, can you deploy a proxy on physical hardware? Absolutely. So as a managed service provider, as a service provider in general, you can take a look at your environment for your customer and really give a deployment right out of the box. You're onboarding a new customer, you need to give them a VBR, you probably need a proxy or two. You can decide how to slice and dice that to give the right appropriate infrastructure to the customer at scale. So you can give them an all-in-one VBR with that default repository that is immutable right off the bat, but maybe there's a bigger customer and you need to give them a couple proxies. You could ship out a half rack of equipment already pre-racked, ready to go. They just slap it into their environment, plug it in a couple spots, and you got that data resilience, that protection as fast as possible, ready for them on hardware that you like. So you're not going and trying to figure out some hardware from some vendor that you're not wanting to integrate. You can do it on the hardware that you appreciate. So really, I think it gives you that flexibility that, is highly desired, and something I kind of miss being a customer sometimes, right? I wish I could go in and deploy it. I just love to play in the lab. That's where I get to do these things now. Anything else, Matt?
Yeah, so I'm going to pull out a couple more questions. Like I said, there's been a ton of interaction, and we're going to try to get through as many of these as we can. So question I saw come up a couple of times is, how will the virtual appliance be licensed? So in short, if you've got Veeam Universal licensing today, you're ready to go, right? This, once again, it's a deployment method for Veeam backup and replication. We're just offering it in a new way to deploy it. So the licensing hasn't changed. If you've got Foundation, you get the capabilities from Foundation. If you've got Veeam Data Platform Advanced, you get those capabilities as well. Similarly, there was a question in here about Veeam Recovery Orchestrator integration. So yeah, when the full Veeam Data Platform is released, and we're expecting that later this year, you'll actually be able to integrate that with Veeam Backup, with the Veeam Software Appliance. And that's to say, you'll be able to run your plans and use this as a source or a target, which does bring up one quick point that we haven't actually talked about yet, Tyler. High availability.
Oh yeah, high availability, fantastic. That'll be coming a little later this year, only on the Veeam Software Appliance. But what that will allow you to do is connect two different Veeam backup or replications, two different Veeam Software Appliances together, and it'll replicate the configuration, it'll replicate everything you need. So in the event of a failure, you can just fail over to the other node and continue on, because your data protection is so vital. One of the features I liked about that high availability is the fact that it's high latency capable. So you don't have to have your servers right next to each other. You can put one in your prod site, one in your DR site, because let's face it, the best practice of deploying a VBR today is drop it into your DR site and have the proxies in your production site. Now you can have a VBR, a Veeam Software Appliance in each site, and fail over wherever you need, depending on your necessary needs for your business. So it's a really great way of managing that kind of stuff. Any other questions in there that we need to or we should answer here, Matt?
Well, there's quite a few that I dig through here. I know there's a lot of roadmap questions as well, particularly around what else will we be seeing move to an appliance-based approach. Unfortunately, we can't talk roadmap on this session. That's not something that we're authorized to do here, so apologies for that. We're also getting a lot of questions around tape. So yes, you can actually still leverage tape today, similar to how you've used it in the past. You do need some sort of tape server though. So you can't hook the tape directly up to the Veeam Software Appliance because it is a hardened appliance. You can't go in there and install your own drivers or anything. Otherwise, that would break a large part of the intent of what this is meant to do. So what I'll do is I'll actually drop some details into one of the questions here. I'll make sure to publish that so everyone can see it. But you can see in our help center that basically what's required to actually get tape devices connected. Tyler, we've answered pretty much as we can. We are hitting our time limit here, but we still have a couple more things that we need to just go through here quickly. So how can someone get started today? Do we have any resources ready for them?
Absolutely, absolutely. So today you can get started. Just go to veeam.com. We've got the links right there to deploy the Veeam Software Appliance. So you can grab that today. If you're already an existing Veeam customer, you can go into your my.veeam.com account and grab the download there as well. So we got all those features there, and ability to get started. If you're looking for conversion, we've got that conversion link. I think Matt has sent it in the chat on one of the previous questions. So if you're looking for, hey, I want to go to, I want to get off the Windows and go to the Veeam Software Appliance, we will have that method coming out a little later this year, so you can do that. Good thing to note about that is you're going to have to upgrade to the Windows version of version 13 when that comes out. So there will be a bit of a migration process there, but I think that's a great thing. You're not trying to willy-nilly go through the migration for such an important component of your environment. Is there something else we need to share people with on how to get started?
Well, yeah, absolutely. No, it'd be great. The handy dandy slide that we have has some resources.
Absolutely. Thank you for that.
So
Matt.
How do you get started today? You can download the Veeam Software Appliance. Got the URL there. You've got the QR code if you want to use that. Our R&D team is extremely active in the forums. If you have feedback, if you've gone through support, things aren't quite working, make sure you follow the forum rules. But if you have ideas, bring them forth. Bring forth the why does this matter? Not just oh, that's a great idea, or I wish I could do this, but I wish I could do this because here's the problem I'm trying to solve. And we've also got the Veeam community forums. These are basically run by the Veeam product strategy team, but it really consists of members, users, whether they're Veeam employees, whether they're R&D, or quite often users like folks on this call right now. They go there, they share their experiences. And ultimately, it's a great way to, if you learn something new, if you've got a cool tip or trick that you want to share, you can actually share it out there. And now similar, we've got a lot of questions around roadmap items as well. Tyler, where can folks learn more about what's coming next?